Chapter 13. I worried much by day and by night. I saw visions I never saw before, although I was good at seeing visions all my life. I believed in all the signs. I believed if a hen should crow, something would happen, and if the tail feathers came out first when she shed, it was a sure sign that you must sow your wheat late, and if the feathers came off her head first, you must put your wheat in very early, and I believed it was bad luck to see the new moon over the left shoulder. Oh, if I would tell you all about the signs I know of, and how Grandma made me wait till the sign was in my feet before she would wean me, and how much better I did than Brother Jim, who was weaned when the sign was in his head, you would be amazed. Ma wouldn't believe such nonsense about signs, and talked mean to Grandma. She said, "I don't believe any such foolishness. She weaned Brother Jim when the sign was in the head, and he has been bald ever since he was old enough to be bald. After my ma found out the good of signs, she weaned all the rest when the sign was in the feet and the heel string. She expected us to trot, and we did trot. Granny never thought of the heel string until Ma named it. I believe our feet are larger than Brother Jim's, yes, and our hair is longer too. I am what you can call a true blue believin' in signs. Wean them in the feet all the time, even if they are more highly flavored. Knowing that I was a great believer in signs, I went to my little preacher and picked out a text to have him preach to. It was something like this: The Dutch set us seek a sign, the greasers seek wisdom, but we seek all truth and it crucified. He asked me what I meant by such talk. I told him I saw in 1874 a wee bit of light. It seemed to get as far away as first as it could, then blaze up and down. Soon it began to get closer and wink and blink at me, then run as big as a comet. Sometimes it would run off and come back and sneer at me again. Kickapoo. At this time I thought I would bring my torture to a change or an end. I said to my little preacher, "Now, George, what do you think of the sign I told you about?" He answered, "I believe it is the evil spirit which the devil has set to draw you into his rabbit's snare. However, I will lay the case before Brother D and see you again tomorrow morning and see what he thinks of those signs." The weary hours of the night dragged along one after another, slow as a Democratic Congress ever was on the 16-to-1 question. I thought I never saw 60 minutes, 16 hours long before. The ages spent in each hour of that night ran in the stupid vistas of the morning hours. The rooster reached his neck into the dark and cock-a-doodle-dooed. It seemed an hour before he got out doodle-doo, and 5 more hours before I could see George and hear from Brother D. I would not have suffered more had I been on an iceberg singing, "On Jordan's stormy banks I stand and cast a wistful eye." I looked at the slow creeping of the pendulum of time, winding out one more hour of that endless anxiety, and prayed to hear the rooster send forth his 3 o'clock moan, a duck cackle, a hen quack, a sheep bleat, a cow low, or the old man pound the floor with his boots to wake up Joe or Nancy Ann, or anything to break up those hours whose dying axles seemed to have never been greased for 1,000 ages. Still, I was the prisoner of time. At last a stray dog came to my window. He was a hungry tramp, and went to the back door to get a handout, but it was a woeful time for him. The mother of 7 half-grown pups was guarding her young, and flew at him with great fury, and tousled his bangs till his head wasn't fit to be seen. He left, and the rooster roared out, "Whop him up, doodle-doo." I laughed myself to sleep about tramps and handouts. I slept like an alligator watching for young niggers till 7 a.m. I then awoke and ate a few bites. My little preacher came and said he had just received word that Brother D was quite sick. However, he has sent his written opinion of your case, which is very exhaustive. He wishes me to read it for you. I asked, "George, what are those numbers in brackets on that paper? Firstly, secondly, thirdly, fourthly, fifthly, sixthly, seventhly, eighthly, ninthly, and lastly?" And he said it was the divisions by sections of Brother D's opinion. Then we read, Dear Brother George, in the charges against Brother Still, in paragraph number 1, I see he is charged with overbelief. Section 2. We believe Brother Still is very sacrilegious, which is the worst of all. Brother T.F. says from 55 till 74 his sack had plenty of golden X's, but it is now empty. He has only one mule left, and we believe him quite sacrilegious. Section 3. We understand he keeps up his dues on $1,000 in the Mutual Alliance, and that will bury the poor fallen man 6 feet below, which is part of the way to his great and red-hot black reward. Section 4. We will all pray to the Lord to remove him to his deserved reward, and pray loud and long. We will say publicly to all that he is guilty of high treason with his overbelief. Don't you know, he said, and stamped his foot at me with skinned eyes and stuck his defiant finger in my face, that the divine law was good enough for him? Listen here. I heard that he said he could take the divine law between his thumb and fingers and stop flux, fever, diphtheria, mumps, scarlet fever, any disease of this climate or globe. Lord, Lord, wilt thou please stop him? Hast thou not made opium, calomel, quinine, jalap, gamboge, blisters, and all these medicines for man? My Lord, thou knowest our very best paying members have large drugstores and still will mash every dollar out of them if he is allowed to run with 25 years longer. Kentucky might as well be sunk. All her hop industry will be dead as a nit. Why, Sister Rama told me with her own eggs that he took a garter as big as 2 hen's egg off her neck with his fingers, just with his fingers, and she is truthful, and that stops our iodine weed business in the South Sea Islands and kills a big revenue, and the government ought to catch him, for I believe in protection. He says he can rub your neck and twist it south by southeast and make a man and woman just as happy as if they had wine in them. He says he can put the divine wine in old bottles and make them new and jump for joy. That is bound to make France angry at us. You know France has always been very friendly to America. See what Lafayette did in our struggle? It will not do for one man to let loose and destroy 1/2 of our industries, brother. You know, if he goes on as he has started, that thousands of millions of kegs of beer with billions of barrels of the very oldest and best of good Irish, English, and Scotch whiskey will be rolled into the sea, and not a friend to mourn its loss. If he gets that divine hook in the people's noses, they will be in the same fix that night flies were when the arc lights were put up, all abuzz and a whiz, and I solemnly fear, Brother George, that the fish will become inebriated and get into a war and fight, chew, spear, and kill so many of the monsters of the waters that their finny dead will poison the air so much as to cause disease to cover the earth and kill us all. You know, 3/4 of the earth is water. Then who can he cure with his thumb and fingers and his boasted divine law? He, too, will die by the stench of all the dead fish, whale, sea crows, seals, porpoises, and such, and he has made all that with his meddlesome finger and thumb. Away with him, my pay is too small now. My wife has to keep boarders, and what will it be if he stops so many of our industries? Where will our living come from? He has been as sour at me as a mad wolf ever since Katie was married. You know we had a few bottles of grape wine on that occasion. It was Law Barrier's best wedding wine, which is rather more the joyful than the young and aged Americans can stand. He insulted my wife and daughter the day after our wedding and said, "You all look like you had been on a big drunk." And he said more than that, too. "You had a glorious time with your wines, fiddle, and romping. Nice folks you are." He made my wife and daughter Betty sick. They were just so sick at his mean talk that they both threw up, and then he said, "Wine buzzards, ha!" I didn't like that, and I told him so. I demanded an apology of Still, and asked him why he sneered at our wedding. He grinned at me and said, "I believe in signs. Elder, I believe the color of your wife and daughter's faces was a sign of something," and he looked at me kind